Okay, and we're starting again, continuing. It's still November 19th, 2011 with John Smeltzer. Okay.
Okay.
So you were promoted, you got to go home, then you went back to Vietnam.
I'm a Lance Corporal. I'm a squad leader from August of '66 until this present time. And I'm training these people that are brought in that have no knowledge of the 81 millimeter mortar, or very little knowledge for all this time. And so I'm now with Keel Company, and we're now in Payable 2. The battalion is in Payable 2, which is on Highway 9 in the Oshaw Valley. And we're out further on Highway 9 in a place called Kowloon. And we are kind of in between Payable and Quezon. Quezon is the nearest base, is the next base over from us, and they're closer to the border, to the Laotian border. And our guys were out on patrol. They went out on patrol and they got out of the range of our mortar, which is about 3.5 miles, or about 5 clicks. 5 clicks would be 5,000 meters, or grid squares on a topographical map. And they were out closer to 6 clicks away, and the enemy knew that A, we couldn't reach them with mortar fire, and B, Quezon couldn't reach them with mortar fire, and they were in a defilade position, so the artillery couldn't help them either, and they knew exactly where they had them. They had them trapped. I went into Sergeant Kaufman and I said, "Sergeant Kaufman, I know this is against the rules, but if I put a charge 9 on the round, I know that it could probably blow the tube, but I could probably reach those guys, but I don't know what the elevation would be." And he said to me at that time, he knew I was a corporal because the papers hadn't got there yet, but he said, "Corporal, you could lose your stripes for this." And I said, "I know that, Sergeant Kaufman, but somebody's got to help these guys. I mean, they're screaming over the radio. I mean, I can tell the tone of voice, the inflection of the voice. They're in trouble." And he says, "Okay, but it's your stripes on the line for it." And so I said, "Okay." He says, "Let me know what the elevation is." So they gave me the deflection and the elevation, and the elevation was well below what was standardized for the 81 millimeter mortar. You're not supposed to go below 800 on the elevation. At 750 maybe in an extreme circumstance.
So this is going to take a more straight...
Yeah, but the elevation he gave me was 650, and so we're well below. Now what we have is is an improvised shotgun, and everything has to be slammed down the tube because it isn't going to go naturally. Part 1. Part 2, the base plate. The base plate is going to pop out of the ground because it's not going to be held in the ground. It'll be pushed along the ground at best, or popped out of the ground at worst.
Was it buried with dirt or sandbag, the base plate?
What was that? It was set in the ground.
So you dig a hole and
You
literally
dig a
stick it in the
hole
ground?
and you stick it in the ground, and then when you fire rounds, it just continues to go down, go down, go down.
Jackhammers itself down into the... Wow.
It's putting a round out 3.5 miles, so it's got a pretty strong force, about a 3¼ inch round.
Wow.
So it's got a
What happened with these these
Well,
men that were trapped?
We gotta, so we got it down there, got set. I said, okay, you guys, kick the sandbags off that edge of the wall. We need that area over there cleared. So they did. We fired around, and I said, send word to those guys to get down. I don't know where this is gonna land, or how it's gonna land. You know, so they did, and they did that for me, and they gave me a right 5-0, drop 5-0, which means the tube comes up slightly, and fire for effect. So we sent out about 5 rounds in the air on that fire for effect, and while all this was going on, myself and one of the ammo carriers are standing on the base plate and literally jumping up and down on it to get it back in the ground between each round.
Wow. And what does fire for effect mean?
Means put as much heat out there as you can on the enemy, you know, to get them to move. The 81 millimeter mortar round has about a 40-foot radius of spinning shrapnel.
Wow.
In a kind of an obelisk or egg-shaped sphere, starting with where the round hits at the narrow end of the egg and forward from there.
Okay, so
Very rarely does it send anything back except concussion. So with that, we sent it out, and I never heard other than the call back from the FO out there said secure fire mission. They're running.
Okay.
So we got them out of a tight situation. Fortunately, no one was killed. I don't know if anyone was wounded or not on that particular thing, but the main point is to save our people.
Yeah.
You know, for that.
I was successful.
Sergeant Kaufman came out of his bunker, and he kind of smiled and didn't say anything, and he smiled and he says, "Well, I guess you still have your stripes, Corporal," and went back in. And I don't know how high this went up, but I guess someone knew that I put charge 9 on it, because probably about 4 months later, they started sending the rounds, the 81 millimeter rounds out with 9 charges on it, 9 increment bags. So yeah, it must have went out that the 81 millimeter mortar tube can handle 9 charges, because it got out there a little bit further. Although it was solely against all the rules and regulations that I had learned in school about the 81 millimeter mortar.
Well, that sounds excellent. You pushed it to its limit and saw what it could do.
I pushed it beyond its limit. Beyond its limit in two categories. One was in the number of charges, and 2 was in the elevation.
Very good.
So I don't know if that's what I got all these recommendations for or not, but you know, in reality, everyone that I talked to that earned a Silver Star or a Bronze Star or any kind of medal over there, they said, you know, they weren't going after medals when they'd done this, when they'd done these things, these gallant efforts that were recorded. They'd done it because their people were out there, and that was the reason that I did what I did, because I knew at least 2 people out on that patrol, our forward observer and the radio operator with him. I didn't know the other guys, but you know what? That was only a matter of principle. It had no bearing on it. You know, they were people, and they deserved to be helped also. So you know, they could have given me 1,000,000 ribbons, and I would have still pressed the issues as far as I could.
Yeah.
Bend the rules, break them if you have to.
They're meant to be broken. Now earlier you told me off camera about how the men lost weight
Oh,
when they were there.
maybe I could better explain that to you if I read it to you
Sure.
on what we
Yeah.
ate. And
So this is more of a day-to-day life.
this is kind of a day-to-day life on sea rations. Now this was put out by a man named Mac. He was with 3-7, probably in the Central Highlands region of Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Not up where we were, but in addition to this, we'll hear from Doc Rod Harden. And I'll say this, our hospital men, we affectionately call Doc because they put us back together and either put us back into the fight or took us out of the fight. And then I followed up with some information on the back on my own conjecture of what it was like to live over there day to day.
Yeah.
So you're getting about 3 pieces of information here, and I'll start with Doc Harden here. Doc Rod Harden is quoting Mac, and he starts out with sea rats and SPS. Quote, "the candy that tastes like soap," end quote. Recently, a high school student asked, "What was life like? How did you wash your clothes? What did you eat?" She was stunned to learn that, point 1, we wore the same clothes for weeks at a time, washing them only if it rained or we crossed a river. I wore the same green t-shirt for 6 months, and we wore no underwear for the simple reason that it bunched up, got filthy, and caused rashes and infection. Socks were changed every day, and each man was required to massage his feet for 20 minutes before putting on dry socks to prevent warm water immersion foot, aka trench foot. Point 2, shocking as it might be to the sensibilities of a 21st century teenager, we did not bathe or shower in the field. We did enforce grooming standards. Every man shaved every day, and we cut each other's hair using the hand clippers from the company barber kit. Shaving was particularly important because it made us wash our faces. If you did not wash your face daily, you quickly got gook sores, that is, infected pores that ulcerated deep into the flesh. Point 3, we ate the same 12 meals, using the term loosely, day after day. The hygiene issues are pretty much as explained, but food is an interesting area of discussion. In garrison, there were mess halls that prepared pretty standard fare. Supplies came through Force Logistics Command in Da Nang, which had a bakery and all the amenities, a major food distribution center. Of a major food distribution center. In the field, we ate the meal combat individual, a canned wet ration in use between 1958 and 1980. Although commonly referred to as sea rations, the Cs went out of use during or shortly after the Korean War. After the Korean War, period. Because we called the MCI a sea ration, I will do so here.
Were they called K rations later, or is that what they were called?
No, K rations were Second World War.
Oh, okay.
That was something totally different.
Totally different.
And it contained spam and other things unknown and unheard of by man. The sea ration was a box set of 12 individual meals packed in a rectangular cardboard cartons. Each meal contained 4 cans. I'll kind of abbreviate some of this stuff, or more appropriately, it had 4 units in it, 3 B1s, 3 B2s, or 4 B1s, 4 B2s, and 4 B3 units. And he goes on to explain the units. The ration cans were packed upright with a flat spread can over the large can on the left side and the small B can over the small can on the right. On top was a brown foil accessory pack and a plastic spoon wrapped in clear plastic. Most of us kept the first spoon we opened. I carried mine for 7 months, licked clean after every meal and put back in my flap jacket pocket.
When was this your experience too? Did you get these same items?
Yeah, and we had well, we called it either the Itty Wad or the John Wayne. Was a little can opener thing that we carried on our. It'll probably come up later
Does
in
it
here.
look like a key, like you?
Yeah, it was a
open it up?
P38 can opener. I think it comes up in the next. The accessory pack included salt, pepper, sugar, instant coffee, non-dairy creamer, almost always hardened into a cake, 2 chiclets, a packet of toilet paper, a 4-pack of cigarettes, a book of 20 moisture-proof matches. I'll use that term loosely also. The cigarettes were different from meal to meal, including Camel, Chesterfield, Kent, Cool, Lucky Strike, Marlboro, Pall Mall, Salem, and Winston. The only 3 cigarettes I smoked in my life were Winston's, all smoked on the night of 10 to 11 June 1969. More about that later.
Did you smoke cigarettes when you were?
Yes. Anything I could get. I tried chewing tobacco once, but I swallowed it. God, I couldn't get enough water into me. I just knew I had to get better to die. Each meal provided about 1,200 calories. Each was bulky and weighed about 3 pounds, so we generally opened the meal boxes, discarded any components we did not want, and put the cans into our dry socks and hung them across the pack. The label of the ration carton was printed across the lid of the box in 3 rows. The first row always read Meal Combat Individual. The second row indicated the name of the meat unit in bold capital block letters. Example given, turkey loaf. That didn't come along until later. In the third row indicated the B unit, B1, B2, B3 in bold capital block letters. The ration boxes were shipped in a rectangular cardboard case, each package containing 12 ration cartons containing 1 meal each, packed in 2 rows of 6 rations. For every 12 meals there were 4 paper wrapped P38 can openers known as John Waynes to open the cans. When you got a John Wayne, you hung it on your dog tag chain. I still have mine and use it when I go camping. It is basic and effective, and in my humble opinion, cannot be improved upon. Except it broke.
Oh.
From time, I think
Did
I
yours
broke
break?
mine. I got another one in there, but
Speaking of smoking, there's been a lot said about the drug culture that was in Vietnam. Did you see any of that? The heavy use of drugs?
we had guys that somehow or another, and I cannot tell you how in the world it ever happened, because we could rarely get. Well, you heard about our hygiene.
Yeah.
I'll say this about our utilities, our clothing. Usually after months of going through the jungle and barbed wire, concertina, and whatever else, our utilities were usually ripped to shreds. From neck to waist, from waist to ankle, they were usually ripped, just barely. We looked like, probably like Swiss Family Robinson or something,
Yeah.
or maybe Robinson Crusoe. Maybe it would be more generic to the term, because the clothing was just ripped to shreds. And we couldn't seem to get resupplied by any of this resupply in Da Nang that he talks about.
Yeah.
It just never got out to us until the regimental commander put us all online before an operation, took a look at us and said, you know what, you guys need clothes, food, you guys need clothes, packs, belts, canteens, etc. And he immediately called out a helicopter, and a whole squadron of helicopters came in with pallet loads of brand new utilities, boots, socks, cartridge belts, packs, canteens, covers, and all this stuff that we couldn't get.
How long had you gone before that happened?
That was the first time and the only
resupplied?
time that I had seen it in Vietnam.
The only time you were resupplied?
The only time is when the regimental commander, a full bird colonel, called it out.
Wow. How long had you
I'd been over there. I'd been over in the field over a little over a year.
Oh my goodness.
Probably 13, 14 months before that ever happened.
So the next question goes to follow is, what did you eat?
Sea rations. Let me skip a few lines here and say that these 12 M units, meal units, were 1 beefsteak, 2 boned chicken or turkey, 3 ham slices, 4 turkey loaf, 5 beans with meatballs and tomato sauce, called beanies and weenies, affectionately, beef slices with potatoes in gravy. Some people call them beef and rocks, other people call them arteries with potatoes. Beans with frankfurter chunks and tomato sauce, same thing as the meatballs. Chopped ham and eggs, beef and spice sauce, tuna fish, pork slices, spaghetti and tomato sauce. And the spaghetti was a replacement for ham and lima beans, or ham. And, well, I can't tell you what it was.
So they just kept dropping this food to you?
Yeah,
Not
they would drop
supplies.
that. They would pitch that out of a helicopter with water and ammo if there couldn't be. And a lot of times they wouldn't even pitch the sea rations out. They just pitch the ammo out, and we go without food for days. That goes on. I'll kind of skip a lot of this because a lot of this. The biggest problem with seas was monotony. Even when we were eating only 2 meals a day, you got tired of them quickly. If you had to eat them cold, as we usually did, they tended to be greasy. The beef was chewy, like boot leather. The problem was that when the MCI was designed in the late 50s, it was designed only for infrequent use. The designers assumed that in World War II in Korea, future users would be rotated off the line every 3 to 4 days into an area where they'd have access to a field mess.
So they were not designed for continuous
No. But
consumption.
he goes on to explain something that he read about World War II in Saipan. And he says he laughed out loud. We ate cold seas for 30 to 60 days at a stretch. In my last month in the bush, I was so disgusted with seas that I stopped eating. I went to Vietnam weighing 171 pounds. 6 months later, I weighed 118. In that last month, I had a can of pineapple bits and a bacon nut roll for breakfast with a cup of coffee. That was it.
So most of the men lost, would you say, an average of how much weight? How much did you lose?
I lost a good 17 pounds, 17, 18 pounds. I went home weighing, what was I, 156, 158 out of boot camp. I went home weighing 145 pounds. With that, I'll kind of go past the rest of this, and I'll get back to Doc Rod Harden and what he had to write about the 1,200 calorie sea packs. One sea ration unit provided approximately 1,200 calories. If we got 2 a day, we were right on the edge of breaking even. On many days, we burned up more than 3,000 calories. We had no vitamins or fresh vegetables, no milk. When we left Vietnam, I weighed 145. I had white lines on my teeth and my fingernails looked like washboards. That meant there was protein deficiency and a serious calcium shortage in our diets. Another 6 months and I probably would have had osteoporosis. Why we didn't suffer from beriberi, vitamin B1, rickets, vitamin D, and scurvy, vitamin C, is anyone's guess. Some of us probably did. All of that coupled with exposure to parasites, tropical infectious diseases, and heavy doses of dioxin, it is truly a wonder we survived it all. This does not even take into account the VC and NVA. That's what Doc wrote.
Now this is your personal.
My personal things, I hit on the fact of the lack of calcium and the vitamin B1, the vitamin D and the C, and then I diversed into a little bit more into the climate and the insects and the reptiles and stuff of Vietnam. And I said, if the mosquitoes did not give you malaria, the bite alone swelled up to half the size of a marble. They were big enough that you could hear them buzzing around you. The most notable joke about them was either you could knock them out of the air with a baseball bat, or they would come in teams. 2 of them would pick up your mosquito net, 2 of them would pull you out of your sleeping quarters, whatever that might be, throw you on the ground and bite you prolifically. Anyway, awareness of snakes was always a necessity. It seemed like everything that slithered was deadly poisonous. Among these were the king cobra, the bamboo pit viper, or affectionately known as the two-step Charlie, and the habu. Of course, the king cobra was obviously noticeable, but the bamboo viper was only 18 to 24 inches long, dark green on the back, and light lemon yellow on the belly. It had one distinguishing mark, a red ring around the neck, which gave it away in the jungle. The habu was not as temperamental as the previous 2, but was a dull red color with grayish cross-hatch marks along its body. Among the animals that plagued us were water buffaloes. They hated anything wearing green. There were elephants the NVA used to bring pack howitzers from the north down south on jungle trails. And there were rock apes along Highway 9 at the rock pile. But unless they dropped on top of you, they only liked to listen to the jingle of the concertina wire with the cans of pebbles on it. All night long they would play with the wire. There was only one incident of a tiger attack on a man, and it happened in our unit in Lima Company to a man now affectionately dubbed Tiger Dave. The tiger grabbed him by the bicep at night and just ripped out his bicep. I see Tiger Dave for about the last 3 years in a row. He's very jovial about it.
He tangled with the tiger.
The tiger got away somehow or another. I just don't know how, because Tiger Dave had the K-bar stuck between his legs and had the rifle by his right hand. And the rifle, the hand, as he went to tap the radio operator next to him, as he felt this breath on the back of his neck, he reached over, and at that point he don't remember too much, because that's when the tiger grabbed a hold of him and just totally started ripping him. He says he doesn't even remember the part about getting back to the area, which was he was probably a good 2 clicks out, and without mortar support, you know, we couldn't tell where he was at any time, but except by the radio operator calling in and giving us points of, you know, points of where they were at what time. He says he doesn't know how in the world he crossed rivers on logs and stuff like that. He says the corpsman was terribly afraid that he would bleed out before they ever got him back to the base.
He was mauled.
In the bicep area.
Only there? Did the tiger grab him anywhere else?
No, he didn't get him anyplace else. And And then I continued to write. Then we also had to contend with the weather. The average temperature was about 86 and occasionally peaked out at well over 100. But it was 100% humidity that sapped us day and night. When it rained, we could see it coming. The snakes would come out and strike at the air or anything else. It turned the jungle into a quagmire of slush, whereas you could climb the steep mountainous trails when dry. When wet, one would climb 5 feet up and slide 10 feet down. All of this plus an enemy that usually refused to be identified, but when he did, he usually had us outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded, or in a terrible ambush. When not, we had to hunt him down, ferret him out, and kill him with extreme prejudice. And that was what it was like over there day to day, if that helps.
So would you say on a daily basis, how many days out of an average month would you actually see the enemy?
You never actually saw the enemy because he had ambushes so neatly contrived as to prevent you from seeing him, but you probably see the end of his rifle more than likely, or the smoke from the end of the rifle coming out of this dense jungle brush.
It's been terribly frustrating.
And the only time you would see him is when he thought he could take you, take you down, and then he would come charging at you, and that was the only time that you ever saw him, or if he got you outflanked. And I heard from other squad leaders that oftentimes they had to pull their men off of the line of fire because they'd been outflanked and the enemy was picking them off one by one, side by side, on the side. And they had to literally grab them by the heels and drag them off the firing line and reform a firing line so that they weren't being taken out. And they just wouldn't give up. I mean, our guys, if they had the enemy out in the open, they wanted him.
Okay.
And this happened probably a couple of times. It happened just before the battle for the hill country in 881 and 886.
Are those mapping works?
Yeah.
What is that?
These are mountains around the Quezon area.
And each mountain would have its own number?
It had its own number, and it was by measurement.
Measure of what? Sea level? How do they...
Measurement of meters from the ground up, from sea level up.
Okay.
And just before that happened, the NVA came down, and they had the whole area around us. I mean, they had literally just literally bunkers and bunkers full of ammo that they were going to spring on us for the battle, but it got interrupted because we were doing a patrol just outside of our concertina wire, and one of them happened to sweep this hill up, and at the same time we had a Rough Rider going through. Where a Rough Rider was a resupply line of vehicles to resupply Quezon, and they were coming through our area, and of course the lead vehicle on that was a tank, and then the one behind it was a twin 40. I'm sorry, not a twin 40. It was the quad 50 mounted in the back of a 6x truck, and in back of that was a twin 40, which was for heavy bunker use, because we didn't have any aircraft that came that far south at that time. So what happened was by I'll say a miscommunication between the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army regulars, who were planning to spring this attack on us, and the VC, who were in the area. The VC jumped out of the riverbed and attacked the convoy, and the tanker leader says, "We're in it," and just buttoned down the hatch of the tank, and the next thing he knew, he had people all over him. and the quad 50 was in back of the tank and had to was literally shooting at the tank to pull the VC off of the tank as they were trying to get up to the hatch to throw, you know, Chi-Coms into the tank. And at that point in time, we had a squad of Marines going up the hill in line to sweep the hill just to the west of our base camp. And at that point in time, they got hit by the NVA, who were up there on the hill. because of that,
was that
the mortars.
881 still?
The 80, no, this isn't 881. 881 and 861 are down the path quite a ways.
Totally different hill.
They're probably about 9 clicks away in Quezon. These are hills surrounding Quezon. You got 881 south, you got 881 north, you got 861, you got 973, which I think was later dubbed Hamburger Hill by the Army, but that's a whole different story. Getting back to where we were, the 81s immediately went into action, and we were firing cover for this squad as more squads deployed into the area, and they noticed there were bunkers in the area and bunkers they couldn't get to, so they told us to put time delay on the 81 millimeter mortar rounds, which we did, and there were secondary explosions as the rounds went into these bunkers and blew up the ammo that was in them. And we chased this unit into a dead end canyon, so we knew they had to come out. And what happened next was we ran out of ammo, and so we had to get ammo supply from one line company to another line company. Was bringing extra ammo out to this line company that had chased this unit into this dead end canyon. And I talked to a squad leader later on that night, and he says you wouldn't believe it. He says it was the worst fight scene that I'd ever seen. It was worse than what was that movie that came out about the Bronx area, that musical thing.
West Side Story?
West Side Story.
It was worse than West Side Story.
It was worse than West Side Story ever imaginable. He says, the first thing I looked at when I broke out into the clear, and I'm carrying cases of ammo in my hands, and he says, I come across this big, humongous Marine, and he's got 2 of them in headlocks, and he's trying to kick this other one to death that he's got on the ground. He says, the next thing I see is this Marine has got this guy down on the ground, holding him by the throat, trying to beat his head in with a helmet. He says, the next thing I see is this guy using an entrenching tool on him. He says, it was the doggonest fight that you ever seen in your life. They had him and they weren't going to let him go.
Hand in hand with no ammo.
Oh, yeah, no ammo.
Oh.
You know, he says he says, and that's just what I saw. He says, there's no telling what everybody saw as we broke out in line, as we broke into the clearing, you know, to see these guys. You know, we just started shooting.
Wow.
He said it was humongous. They had them and they weren't going to let them go. They weren't going to let them go out and fight us again. So
but you were operating the mortars.
I was back, and I was probably about a click and a half, you know, back from them, you know. So we were firing relatively high elevation, you know, with almost no charge.
No charge?
Almost no increment bags, or 1 or 2 increment bags. I mean, it was very close in, very close to where we were. And from there, the fight continued on all the way out to Quezon.
Wow. How long
And it was like
there?
a precursor to Quezon, because the Quezon battle, the battle for Quezon, went on probably just a few days later than this. And they sent all of our companies up there.
Okay. Well, just to wrap this up, because I know we've gone way longer than an hour, and I thank you so much. You left What year did you leave, and what did you think when you left? What was the circumstances when you left?
The circumstances of my leaving and why I ended up spending 22 months instead of 18 or 19 was because the first sergeant decided that we owed them a month from July when we got back. 6 months plus July, we owed them a month, so we had to stay till August, you know, to pay back the month of leave that we took off. In August, the country had its first national election, and the communists were going to fight that tooth and nail and make sure that it never happened, but it did, in spite of their efforts. And we could not get near an air base or a landing strip or anything else for a good 2 months after that, or a good month after that.
You couldn't leave even.
You couldn't even leave. And ironically, the day that I left the forward area, the day I left Dong Ha, on an Air America flight, the CIA, as we got to the end of the runway and turned around and started taxiing down the runway for our liftoff, the pilot got on the radio and said, "We're receiving incoming fire." He says, "I'm going to try and get this thing out of here just as fast as I can." So he flew us from there to Da Nang, got us out of there, flew us to Da Nang. We boarded on Da Nang on a Continental Airlines fan jet. And when they finally got us airborne out of the country, the whole plane just took a big sigh of relief the minute the captain got on the radio or the PA system and told us that we're above the kill zone.
Wow.
The whole plane just took a big sigh of relief. I mean, you could just hear the plane exhale.
You were waiting for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they flew us to Kadena Air Base, where we went back to a staging battalion and got flights out back to the United States.
How many people did you know on that plane? Were there people from all over?
They were just from all over. I probably knew maybe one person on that plane.
And you got home, and did you get a job when you got home? That was an expensive job, John. It was a very expensive job.
Did I get a job?
You get a job
Well,
when
you know what? There weren't too many businesses that wanted to kill people with extreme prejudice. So getting a job was a little bit stretching my area, my imagination just a little bit. But I had taken printing in high school, and my first job when I got out. Well, let me back up a second. The first job I got when I got back in the United States was a job for Victor Contometer, and I was repairing very early first generation computers and typewriters and adding machines, electronic adding machines. And I could only have that job for about 2 months. They couldn't because I was so heavily into debt. They couldn't bond me. The bonding company wouldn't bond me.
You were in debt?
So they had to, yeah, because I was married and had children.
Yeah.
And
did you receive any kind of welcome home? This is the war where the soldiers.
I didn't get any kind of welcome home. I got a few of those.
Something hostility.
The hostility was rampant in those days, and there were quite a few. Well, I'll call them hippies. I don't know if they were or not. They were just dressed in that kind of outfit, lingering around LAX when I got home, and I just grabbed my sea bag and I waited for my mother to pick me up, and I kind of stood with my back to the windows. I figured if they're gonna take me, you're gonna have to come straight on, you know. And they yelled a couple of obscenities my way, and you know, squared around. There was about 4 to 6 of them, and then they continued walking away from me. They never closed in for the encounter, so I'm glad they didn't, because it would have been brutal from there on.
Yeah. So in hindsight of your service in Vietnam, what do you think about it now? What do you think about the war in general?
I still cannot displace what the United States wanted there versus the people. You know, what they wanted and what they sent us over there for is totally politically motivated, and cannot or does not influence my heart for the people that were being brutalized, terrorized, butchered, and otherwise, you know, by the communists. Communism is far more severe than anything we could ever imagine, because they believe that the end justifies the means, whatever the end is, and that has no limitations. That's communism. You know, why people want to go to become communists in the United States is a mystery to me to this day, because they just don't understand the extremes that they will go to achieve their interests. And that's what I saw, and that's primarily what I was fighting for. Most of the men with me in 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, which I like to call my fighting unit, feel the same way. They had no political ambitions. There was none of that there.
And you're still in contact with some of these men that you served with?
Oh yeah, I talk personally with Doc Hoppy every year when we go up to the 3-3 warrior training up there at 29 Palms, Camp Wilson. We'll go up there and talk to these young guys who are going to Afghanistan, and we'll you know, give them a heads up on what they're going to be looking for. I wish somebody would have done that for me.
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. I think that's great.
Yeah, so I can tell them, you know, in reality, what is going to happen when the real bullets start flying. They've just been training with all these blanks and stuff like that. What's going to happen when the real bullets start flying is what they want to know. I can't believe they're so young looking. I can't believe that I look that young. That I was just a, God, some of them look like they're barely 14 years old. And yet, they've got to carry a, they'll go in looking 14, they'll come out looking 18, but feeling like they're 30. Because I believe the first casualty of war is losing your innocence. You never get that back. Well, you can feel it back every once in a while when you get with some of these guys and you get to palling around and you feel like you're 18, 19, 20 years old again. But it's only momentarily. But it's a lot of fun.
John, is there anything you would like to add at the final closing remark? Is there anything that you would like to add?
No, other than the fact that I too suffered post-traumatic stress syndrome from all of this stuff, all the carnage and stuff that I saw over there. And that it personally has helped me to talk about this stuff, as opposed to keep it in me and to, you know, draw everything back into myself and to keep it inside, because that'll only tear me up from the inside out. And so this has helped me. I wish it would help some of my brothers in that are still suffering from this post-traumatic stress in other parts of the United States. I certainly wish and I pray for their recovery from this horrible disease, where they have to relive moments in history that happened 40 some odd years ago over and over and over and over again. And it's just a terrible thing, you know. And now we have younger people suffering from this in today's environment because things haven't changed. If we continue to believe that we can win friends and influence people overseas who have a totally different mindset and a totally different culture than ours, we are sadly mistaken.
John, thank you so much. On behalf of my generation, I thank you for your service.
Okay,
And,
you're welcome.
I'm throwing you a victory parade every day.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, John.